You know, this channel has always been about nostalgia. And a lot of the games that I've covered on the Nostalgia Factor have mainly been games that I've grown up playing, that I love, ones that remind me of my childhood, takes me a blast from the past. And a lot of these games are ones people have played too. It's just so hard to keep up with what game I should do next, especially one from my childhood. If only there was a detail that I could think of that would kind of take me back to that time. Hey, reminds me of a song. I got it. Life is a highway. And there's another copyright claim because I used half a second of a song that really should be in the public domain. Very epic, Disney. Thanks. Developed by Helix Games and published by THQ back in 2006, we are going to be taking a look at Cars on the Game Boy Advance today. This is another one of those games, like The Incredibles and a few other games I've covered here on the channel, that I grew up playing, and I really loved. But taking a look back at a lot of these games from my childhood, I realize now that, from a review standpoint, a lot of them aren't very good. And the question on whether or not Cars on the Game Boy Advance holds up, I'm here to tell you guys, not really. This game, for one, doesn't really have a major story or plot. The very loose plot here is that Lightning McQueen, the Ka-Chow car himself, is going through a series of races in Radiator Springs in order to participate in some random tournament, racing against various opponents from the Cars movie franchise, such as Chick Hicks or the Dinoco King himself, as well as Doc Hudson and a few other people. There is no story. It's non-existent. Don't expect a major plot out of this one. Kind of similar to The Incredibles. There really isn't a lot to cover when it comes to a plot. A very loose recreation of the first movie with a random tournament chucked in. And again, similar to The Incredibles, funnily enough, as another Pixar licensed game on the Game Boy Advance, the cutscenes for this game look very stilted. Graphically, this game, in a very similar sense, is also very average, not very impressive. Some creative looking sprites here and there, and some very interesting track layouts, but really at the end of the day, this is a very average looking Game Boy Advance game. Very generic color palette, some okay animations when it comes to the actual racing itself, but otherwise, especially looking at the cutscenes, not a very impressive looking Game Boy Advance game, and don't expect an incredible OST out of this game either. If you're looking for a hidden jam alert of sorts, where you're trying to think, ooh, does this game have a good soundtrack I can listen to? Not really. This game really doesn't have a ton of music to really speak of. Take a listen for this one for yourself. This is basically how the entire soundtrack is in the game, so if you're into it, give it a listen. But graphically and musically, this one is not going to blow you away at all. When you look at a game like this, licensed game or not, when it's a racing game, you guys want to know mainly about the gameplay, the controls, track layout, that kind of thing. That really makes it the core of the racing game experience. But I'm here to tell you guys straight away that the controls, the camera, and the gameplay as a whole, it's just simply horrendous in so many ways possible. And I would give you guys a demonstration of what this looks like, but I don't think my stomach can handle. No, I said I wasn't giving a demonstration of what the controls and the camera looks like. So could you please stop moving the freaking camera? I think I'm gonna be sick. That aside, The gameplay in Cars on the Game Boy Advance isn't very good, all things considered. The racing is extremely repetitive, with very bland and boring track layouts, jumping from racetrack to desert track. Nothing really eventful, no real power-ups, no obstacles. Outside of your opponents, there really isn't any unique elements to it. It just gets boring and repetitive after a while, playing through the story, if you want to call it that. And the camera itself is so horrible. It's so zoomed in on Lightning McQueen, you can't see what's ahead of you on the track, you can barely see your opponent. If the camera would have been pulled back a notch, Game Boy Advance game or not, it would have given you a far clearer layout of the track itself, and would have allowed you to have far better racing mechanics. And quite frankly, it just doesn't need to be that zoomed in, but it is a major issue in navigating the tracks. And the controls themselves, as demonstrated before, it's far easier for you to slip off the track, ram into your opponent, and you'll end up having more frustration with it because of how loose these controls are going around turns. It's just not that good. The racing in this game gets extremely repetitive, and with a zoomed-in camera that allows you to not see anything, as well as racing controls that completely hinders your ability to navigate the racetracks in this game, it's just not fun. And quite frankly, just take a look at this for yourself. The racing gameplay, controls, and camera design within Cars on the Game Boy Advance is very bad. And that pretty much summarizes Cars on the Game Boy Advance, guys. There really isn't a ton to delve into with this particular title. Going back and looking at this game now, as much as I may have loved it, this game is extremely average, very mediocre, very similar to The Incredibles on the Game Boy Advance. The game looks fine, soundtrack's pretty much non-existent. There's no story to follow here, with some very stilted and janky cutscenes, and gameplay that gets extremely repetitive with a horrible camera and horrible controls. This really isn't a game that you need to go back and play whatsoever. This is no hidden gem on the Game Boy Advance, nor is this a hidden gem Pixar or even a licensed game for that matter. It's extremely average with a lot of boring and bad elements to it, and at the end of the day, if you're curious to play this one, give it a shot if you're a big Cars or Pixar fan, but play another one of the ports. Don't play the Game Boy Advance version. Stick with the Wii, PlayStation Portable, Xbox 360, something that isn't this one. This isn't a very good title. And that is going to do it for this episode of Nostalgic Blast Reviews covering Cars on the Game Boy Advance. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. This was a cool video to do. Despite the fact that this game is extremely mediocre and really not worth playing, it was still cool to go back into another childhood game that I grew up with, despite the fact it doesn't really hold up. And I enjoyed sharing that experience of sorts with you guys in going back and reviewing this game. But I hope you guys did enjoy. If you guys did enjoy the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you guys want to keep up with future reviews, Q&A video I have planned coming up, just other videos in general when it comes to gaming collaborations, unboxings, and all sorts of nostalgic content. Sub to the channel if you guys want to keep up with that content. And comment down below what you guys thought about Cars on the Game Boy Advance. Did you grow up playing this one? Is there a better port of it that I don't know about? Do you guys have any other cool licensed games that I should be checking out? Because there are a few hidden gems here and there despite the reputation licensed games have. Let me know any of that in the comment section down below. And until next time, guys, this has been Ryan from the Nostalgia Factor saying, keep on gaming.